Welcome to the third practice. And what you're going to do now is you're going to complete tasks 7 through to 10. And by the time you get to task 10, you've got everything you need really, certainly to take you up to the end of year 8 in terms of skills on 2D design. So task number 7 is to complete this maze. So a lot of the work that we're going to have to do in 2D design may be to trace around an object that you've drawn yourself by hand, or to trace around a photograph that you may have produced. So you're going to need to be quite accurate with the way you trace. So there's a little maze here, and what we're going to get you to do is to use the path tool to draw a line from A to B without touching the sides of the maze. Okay, and this is really going to test your accuracy to the limit. So we're going to use the path tool, which is this one here. But at the moment the maze is fairly small, so it would make sense to zoom in. And to zoom in, you obviously use this button here, and to zoom out you use the other one as well. So zoom in. Okay, there's also another zoom in tool. I just zoom out. It's this one here, and this allows you to draw a box around the object that you want to zoom in. So I normally use that one because it's slightly more accurate. So I'm not going to go all the way through the maze. I don't want to give you the answer, but I'm going to start off just showing you how to create a curve using the path tool. Now I want it to be a continuous path. I don't need to keep on stopping and starting. So we're going to start with A. You're going to try and get all the way to B, and I don't want you to touch any of the black lines either side. Okay, I've made my line color red already, so that you can see a difference between the line I'm drawing and the lines that are already there. Now the way the path tool works, if I just scroll down, you click once to start the line off, and then wherever you want to create a bend in your line, you click again, and you can see it's starting to shift around the anchor point, and then you keep on going, and then when you want to finish the line you double click, and then it drops the line. Okay, let's get rid of that and zoom up. So here we go. I'm going to start off. I'm only going to go roughly halfway around the maze, and I want you to try to figure out how to get to the end. So this is where really you might get a little bit frustrated to begin with. If you can get all the way around the maze without touching the sides, then you're not going to be doing too bad, and you'll certainly be good enough at least to begin creating your work with some degree of accuracy. Okay, so that's the kind of thing I want, and I want you to get all the way from A all the way to B. Just going to zoom out. Task number 8. This is this will give you quite a few good skills as well, particularly if you need to flip an object horizontally or vertically. So task 8A is to copy and paste the picture twice. So I'm just going to use that copy paste tool that I showed you in one of the other tutorials. I'm just going to move them side by side. And what you can do in 2D design, I've chosen an asymmetric shape. What you can do in 2D design really easily is use these objects here. So if I want to flip along the horizontal line, so the horizontal line is the one that goes across the bottom, I can use this tool here, the double-headed arrow. There you go, and I flipped it back and forth so it gets a mirror image of the object. And if I then want to flip it vertically, so the vertical line is the one that goes up, I can just use this tool here. Okay, so that's how you flip and rotate objects. If I want to move the object, so I put it at maybe a 45-degree angle, it's worth trying this as well. If you click on the object, and just to the right hand side there's a little circle. If you click on that, you can then rotate your object as well. Okay, useful skills. Okay, now task number 9. Now it's really difficult on screen to figure out how big the object is going to be when it's printed out. That's either printed out on the printer or printed out using the laser cutter. So you really need to think about how large the item is you're drawing on screen. So normally what you do is you create a box to the dimensions that you want, and then draw your object within the box. So for example, if your mirror for the year 7 project needs to be no bigger than 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, then you would draw a box on screen 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and then draw your object within it, and then you can be absolutely confident that it's not going to be too large or too small when you print it out. Okay, now this is probably one of the more difficult things for students to get their heads around to begin with. There are 2 ways that you can work out your sizes. One of them I mentioned in the first video, and that was to count the black dots. Okay, so if I was to start to draw a box, the instructions say to draw a box 5 centimeters wide by 10 centimeters tall. Now I can click anywhere on screen at the moment, okay, but that doesn't really help me because I can't then count accurately the dots. So what I would like you to do is select this tool here that says grid lock, and what that does is it makes me jump to the grid, so I can only click on those dots. So that makes it really easy for me to draw an accurately sized box. So if I click once and I count along 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I count down 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can then be confident that my box is correct because I'm on grid lock. Okay, just for information, step lock is very, very similar, but instead of jumping in 1 centimeter jumps, it jumps in 1 millimeter jumps. So if I need it to be a slightly different size, then I can use step lock. You probably can't see it. You may just be able to see it jumping slightly, but that does it in 1 millimeter jumps. Okay. Now the instruction above says using rel. Okay, because it's not always the case that it's going to be exactly to a centimeter. Okay, so we're going to use rel, and the rel box is just down here. So can you see where it says rel there? Now keep your eye on that as my cursor moves over the screen, and you can see there are numbers jumping up and down all the time. Okay, that's my coordinates on the page. It's a little bit like graph paper. So those are my coordinates, and as soon as I click on screen, you see they go to 0, and as I move away from the point where I clicked, it starts creating the measurement for me. So you can tell straight away how wide and how tall the box is that I'm drawing. Okay, so I'm going to delete that original box now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box that's 50 millimeters by 100 millimeters, so 5 centimeters by 10. In technology we always use millimeters, and I'm going to use the rel tool to help me. Okay, now in order to make it as accurate as possible, I'm going to use the step lock. So instead of jumping up in 0.1 of a millimeter, it's going to be jumping up in a millimeter at a time. So step lock on, box tool selected. You can see the numbers jumping around in the rel box at the moment, but they're jumping around in whole millimeters. I'm just going to click once, and I'm going to move away. So the first number, the number right next to rel, is the x coordinate, or the width of the box. And where it says minus, that's my y coordinate. There we go. So I've done the box. If you take a really quick look at where it says rel now, that's 50 by 100. And if I move slightly, you can see the measurements going up and down. It's quite tricky to get it right, but a little bit of patience and you'll get there. Okay, and that's how you make sure that whatever you draw on screen is going to be the correct size when you print it out. Now the last task that we're going to need to do, this will come in really, really handy, particularly in year 8 and possibly year 9 when you're doing projects with wood veneers and that kind of thing. I'm going to show you how to trace an object really, really accurately. Okay, so what you can do is you can use the path tool to trace an object, and therefore you'll be developing the skills that I gave you in task number 7. Or you can make life slightly easier for yourself, particularly if you've got a silhouette, and you're going to get the computer to do all the hard work for you. So all I've done to get this picture is simply gone onto the internet and typed in silhouette, and you can see the picture there. I've just copied and pasted it from the internet. Okay, the disadvantage is, of course, that this wasn't created myself, so I wouldn't get any marks for originality of design, but it's a starting point for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the vectorize tool to create the shape, and the vectorize tool is this one just over here. So I'm going to click on that once. I'm then going to go over to my object, and I'm going to click on it. Okay. Now what the computer is telling me now is this is the picture that I want to trace, and over the left hand side these are the colors that the computer can see. So we can see a white background, you can see a black object, and it can see some greys. Now they're probably around the outside just here. Okay. Now I don't want it to trace around the white or the greys. The only object I want to trace around is the black, so that's the one I'm going to leave selected. Click OK, and click OK. And it's traced around the object. Now those of you who are more eagle-eyed than the others will realize that what it's done is it's traced around it really, really roughly. So that's a disadvantage of using this technique. So you can't quite get it as accurate as you want, but it has traced around it. And now what you can do is you can make the line color red, and you can make the fill no fill. Okay, and then you've got a nice neat outline. So I went to vectorize, I chose the black line, I clicked OK, then I went to color to make it red, and I went to fill to make it no fill. Okay, and there we go. There are your 10 tasks. Now what you should be able to do now is use those skills to be able to work independently to at least start creating your design with a little bit of help from your teacher. Well done.